fleet of hundreds of junks set sail on the South China Sea. Their mission? To defeat the Dutch in Taiwan, formerly known as Formosa. In command, a 36-year-old general named Koxinga. It is 1661. Koxinga's mission would make him a hero, a legend, and for centuries, in the eyes of many, a god. How did Koxinga adopt a brilliantly designed merchant ship and harness its power for war? That's what these engineers and historians are trying to figure out. They plan to recreate the junk from scratch, but the process is steeped in controversy. So when the time comes, will it float or sink? Koxinga's legendary 17th century siege and his warship reconstructed piece by piece. (1661). A fleet of hundreds of armed merchant ships, known as junks, set sail from Fujian, China. Across the Taiwan Strait, less than 200 kilometers away, Fort Zeelandia, near present-day Tainan, Taiwan, is manned by hundreds of Dutch defenders. The Dutch know this fleet is coming, and they are powerless to stop it. Koxinga, commander of the invading forces, faces a dangerous voyage. To survive, he will have to rely on the merchant ship's unique design.
Koxinga's not attacking Formosa for fun or for treasure. This is a one-way trip. It's his last chance.
If he fails, it will mean death for him and his troops. Tainan, Taiwan. Population 750,000. A maritime city, centuries of shipbuilding and trade have shaped it into a modern hive of commerce based on the sea. Here in Tainan, Koxinga, commander of the 1661 invasion, is revered. His image seems to be everywhere. Shrines are built to his memory. Also known as Qingqinggong, streets and universities are named for him. And it's not just in Tainan.
Throughout Asia, people pray to his image. In Taiwan alone, there are hundreds of temples in his honor. Some think that Koxinga was a pirate. Some called him a king. People argue about whether he was a loyalist or a madman, but his impact was so great that he became a god.
How? The answer lies in the feat of seamanship Koxinga pulled off here in Taiwan. His mastery gave Koxinga an aura of invincibility at sea. How did he do it? That's what this team of shipbuilders in Tainan wants to find out. They've been given a mission by the city government. Recreate an exact seaworthy replica of the armed merchant junks of Koxinga's time, piece by piece. The completed ship will celebrate Koxinga's legacy among the people of Asia. And this man, historian Chen Xingshong, will help lead the effort.
这一段海岸就是郑成功船只登陆的地方。前面就是一条鹿耳门溪，郑成功就从澎湖这边过来。
如果你要再做那种船，有什么方法？
如果要把当时的船只要重建的话，可能需要很仔细的研究，然后一步一步来。这个材料要对，什么样的木头，用什么样的工具，用熟悉的工人这个结构要对，外表要对这个问题很多。
But right now, there's a big problem. No records of how to build the traditional Chinese junks exist. Unless the team can unlock these secrets, they cannot design a replica.
当年的设计图那在中国古代造船方法里面呢，他们是没有设计图的。
It will not be until they leave Taiwan and go to Japan, the land of Koxinga's birth, that they uncover their first clue. It begins here, in Hirado, on Japan's western coast. Every year in July, Hirado's inhabitants celebrate the Tei-Seiko Festival. Tei-Seiko is the Japanese name for Koxinga.
定成功生誕祭毎年やってるんですけれども、定成功が平戸で生まれたということを我々非常に誇りに思ってます。
But Chikan Shu of the Tainan city government has not only come for the festivities, he's on a detective mission. He's searching for just one detailed image from which the designers can glean enough information to create an accurate blueprint of Koxinga's ships. Koxinga was born here in 1624. His father, who was Chinese, was absent. He was raised by his Japanese mother. In the 17th century, this city is a bustling port of trade, boasting ships from all over the world. Junks were a mainstay of the economy, carrying merchandise to and from Hirado and the neighboring region, long before the advent of photography. Hirado's officials kept track of the ships that passed through the port in paintings. And in the Matsura Historical Museum, the boat reconstruction team finds a critical clue to what the junks of Koxinga's time looked like. A 300-year-old scroll, paintings of Chinese junks, depicts the merchant ships as they were in the 17th century. One of the paintings of a Taiwanese junk records the detailed dimensions of each part of the ship. It is the breakthrough they were looking for.
巻物ができたのが1700年代半ばというふうに考えられてまして、絵巻物当選の図が、世界で唯一なんですね。
It's been in the museum all along, but no one thought it could form the basis for a replica. So how do you make an accurate blueprint for a 30-meter-long ship from a painting?
我因为要做这条船，去访问了很多学者，也跑到日本的平户去看这个台湾船它的原图。那我看了都很兴奋，我想把这件事情来实现它。那我请教过很多学者，他们告诉我，他们觉得我好像神经有点问题。
But she has an ace up his sleeve, a great craftsman who can make a painting into a blueprint. He is considered one of the best model makers in Asia and an expert on traditional Chinese junks. That man is Seng Xiuming. He will make a blueprint, then test its workability by fashioning a small-scale model of the ship. The junk's iconic shape is recognized worldwide as a symbol of Asian commerce. But its shape is very practical. It's been a marvel of seaworthiness since the Middle Ages. The hull of the junk is remarkably strong, able to withstand the region's periodic violent typhoons. Another unique feature of junks was noticed by a great Italian explorer in the 13th century.
其实，在马可波罗时代，马可波罗就发现东方的船有很多迷人的地方跟智慧的科学。譬如说，中国船就是一个很重要，就是一个。这是隔舱板的一个设计，隔舱板，就是一个一个的这样子一个像竹子一样的竹节，这种船就是中国船在设计观念取自于生物界就自然界的一个竹子的概念，这个里约社都有谈到这个问题，那这种东西结构就让船能够保持一种强固的一个结构。
The masts hold the unique fan-shaped sails. The sails and the rudder power the ship. Sen Xiuming must make a 1/25th scale copy of the ship before the full-size replica can be built. For weeks, he's pored over documents and paintings and created a set of detailed blueprints. From those blueprints, he's hand-fashioned a model. It is a masterpiece. Now he has to test it in water to prove its workability. The model is run through exacting tests on its shape, seaworthiness, and ability to handle rough seas. It is just a model, but for now, it works. Based on the test results, it is now possible to build the life-size junk. Fujian is a coastal province. Its maritime tradition goes back thousands of years. Kaxinga spent most of his life here, after moving as a boy from Hirado to Fujian to be with his Chinese father. Kaxinga's image is omnipresent in Fujian. Not only in giant statues like this one in Chenchu City, but also in traditional Chinese hand puppets. Even a Kaxinga superhero cartoon is now in development.
为什么泉州人会把郑成功作为这个很多这个人物的这个形象呢？是因为郑成功呢是在泉州呢是当做一位英雄式的人物。
Kaxinga's power was on the sea. In Fujian, he and his father ran a naval trading and pillaging empire of 1,000 ships.
郑成功呢，代表着福建的一种经略海洋的进取精神，我想这是第一点。
In Kaxinga's time, most of the shipbuilders were women. Today, on the beach in Fujian, Wen women still repair old junk ships by hand, using time-tested methods. It is from these beaches of Fujian that Kaxinga launches his fleet to conquer Taiwan. His motivation? To restore the Ming, the dynasty he vowed to defend till death. By early 1661, Kaxinga has spent more than 10 years fighting to defend the Ming dynasty in China. Yet that empire has collapsed around him. The Manchurians from the north are invading China. For Kaxinga, a fierce Ming loyalist, China is no longer a safe place.
所以他到台湾去是为了争取能够有一天能够反清复明，恢复他的明朝。
But going to Taiwan means a confrontation with the Dutch occupiers. Kaxinga needs a plan. He meets with He Bin, a Chinese defector from the Dutch. He Bin has smuggled out a map of Taiwan, showing Fort Zeelandia, the Dutch stronghold. This is the information he needs. Instead of fighting the Manchu invaders in China, he will conquer Taiwan. He gathers hundreds of junks in Fujian and sets sail.
For Kaxinga, he had 25,000 men, almost all of his army, or the most important part of his army, and he was wagering it all on this one voyage.
His army's journey from here is harrowing.
The Taiwan Straits were considered among the most dangerous seas that there were in East Asia.
2 days out to sea, the weather deteriorates. In the Penghu Islands, still 50 kilometers away from his destination, Koxinga is forced to stop. Koxinga turns to the gods for support. His junks survive the dangerous journey. It is a ship like those rugged junks that the Tainan city mayor and officials want to reconstruct. At Koxinga's shrine, they pray for a blessing for their shipbuilding efforts. The project's success will depend on the skills of the craftsmen. Chen Lin Fu is a master boat builder with 32 years' experience. He will be the project manager. But this project is unique, and he's already concerned.
其实，来接这条船的时候，本身是抱持了一个诚惶诚恐、如履薄冰的一个心情，因为这个不是只有一个造船工艺的问题，这里面包括的就是说有文化、有传统的事情在里面啊。
He's right to be worried. Everything has to be accurate. The materials, the design, the history. The government has added to the project a team of engineers and historians, the Technical Advisory Group, or TAG, to monitor all aspects of the ship's construction. The historians want to create the ship exactly the way it would have been in the 17th century. The engineers want to keep the ship safe and durable. The heated debate over these two issues has begun. In Koxinga's time, the junks were made of pine, camphor, and Taiwania. These types of wood were readily available in China, but this is not the same type of wood. It is acacia, shiraya, and South Asia beechwood. Its durability and hardiness are the reasons project manager Chen chose to use it for the keel. To accommodate for the heavier wood, model builder Chen Shuming's original blueprint must be changed. As a result, the historical accuracy of this boat is now compromised. The members of the construction team were chosen for their experience in shipbuilding, but none of them have previous experience with building a historical replica. Master shipbuilder Shi Tong was chosen to lead the construction team because of his knowledge of wooden boats, a rare expertise these days.
一世人的机会哦，多一摆些尔，无过第二摆啦。啊，拄啊今年啊80多岁啦吼，咱会当个担当这个责任吼，安尼我足欢迎，足嘿啦。啊，就即摆现在就安尼吼。就安尼的时阵，都已经看到是明仔载即支头切。
Today is an important milestone, the laying of the boat's keel. The ceremony starts at the Koxinga Shrine in Tainan. Koxinga's deity is taken from its shrine and carried through the streets, all the way to the boat-building site. For Tainan, Taiwan's oldest city, this ship will not only attract tourists, but will function as a cultural ambassador as well. Today, Tainan is announcing to the world that the 17th century Taiwan boat construction has begun.
"其实安放龙骨对我们拿一个小孩子的过程的话，它是最贴切的。安放龙骨就是代表妈妈知道说肚子里面 有一个小孩。等到我们下一个阶段，就是他要下水，那下水的意义就是等于小孩子诞生的意义，所以我们是在经历这个见证他的过程，所以是很荣幸、很喜悦的一件事情。
The mayor of Tainan, who initiated the boat building project, presides over the ceremony.
正式结束，那汉人大量的移居这个整个台湾，可以说是台湾近代史非常重要的一个新的起点。那这一艘船呢，就是这个新的历史的一个开拓者。没有这一艘船，没有今天的台湾，没有17世纪以来几百年的台湾的故事。
Nearly 3.5 centuries ago, Koxinga is making history. As Koxinga's fleet sails toward the Bay of Taiwan, the Dutch have one last hope to stop them. It is a shallow sandbar that shifts with the tides, lying just outside the harbor. The Dutch know about it, but does Koxinga?
Koxinga has local knowledge about the tides. He knows that for the first 3 days of every lunar month, the sea will be just that little bit higher, and that will allow him to get over the sandbar and to attack the Dutch.
Koxinga times his attack carefully. He knows that the new moon will bring the high tide that will enable him to enter the harbor. On the morning of April 30th, the water rises. Koxinga enters the harbor.
Koxinga couldn't just turn up and plant his flag and say he was the master of Formosa. First he had to deal with this, Fort Zeelandia. In 1661, this is a massive fortress. It's got plenty of artillery, loads of water and food. It can survive a very, very long siege.
Koxinga tries to avoid attacking Fort Zeelandia and plans an assault on the smaller, more vulnerable Fort Provincia. But the well-equipped Dutch ships start firing at his men, forcing Koxinga into a sea battle.
The Dutch were actually firing at a bunch of Koxinga's men, trying to keep them from boarding their ships, when one of their cannons leaked a spark into the powder chamber and the flagship exploded, a huge, huge explosion, killing lots of Chinese and lots of Dutch people at the same time.
The size and agility of the junks help Koxinga defeat the larger, more cumbersome Dutch ships.
The Dutch are taken by surprise. They've always told themselves that one Dutchman is worth 20 Chinese.
In present-day Tainan, the ship's construction team pays special attention to the ship's form and structure. The keel is the spine. The frames are like the rib cage, much like a human skeleton. The holes that were created for the rivets need to be waterproofed so seawater will not penetrate through them. The technique they employ is remarkably historically accurate. Rope-wrapped screws are pounded into the wood and then are covered with a sealing material.
我们吃的那个蚵仔的糠，去烧成的灰跟桐油混在一起之后，那就是古代的洗力扣，就是最后把它浮起来之后，这样子将来就不会。
But for the historians, one historically accurate detail, like the sealant, doesn't make up for the fact that so many other aspects are inaccurate.
在这个复原台湾船的过程当中，有比较大争议的部分，大概包括几个部分。第一个是形状上面，尺寸上面略有更改这样子。就像说这个船的这个宽度和深度，在这个水线以下的部分稍微 有一些改变这样子，然后还有就是它使用的材料，木头的材料种类是不一样的。第三个是使用的工具跟工作的，还有第四个工作的方法上面有点不一样，建造的方法上面。
This is what they're arguing about. It's just a simple screw, but if you are trying to make a boat that fits with the technology of the 17th century, this should be a nail. This is what the historians are so angry about. My heart is with the historians. I am a historian. I'm on their side. But you can never recreate history 100%. Fort Zeelandia is not what Fort Zeelandia was. It's silted up. It's not an island anymore. It's in the middle of town. Coxinga's shrine is not the same shrine. It's been completely demolished and rebuilt twice. And if you want to make a ship for the purpose of bringing tourists, not historical reconstructionists, but tourists to Tainan, then surely it's better to have something that lasts for 20 years instead of one that falls apart in 3. And if this is what it takes, then I can live with that.
So far, the historians are losing.
这个船只建造的目标是复原17世纪的台湾船，它的重点第一个是复原。我觉得台南市政府造这条船，原本是一个对历史负责，要造一个复原古船的目的。就古代的造船，用它的方式来航海，中国人航行了1000年，你说这种船只不能航海，这句话是讲不通的。
In protest, the historian Chen Su-song and model maker Xing Shu-ming quit the project. The project must carry on without them. Four years after Coxinga's invasion of Taiwan, the one-time Dutch governor of the island, Frederick Coyet, awaits execution. The charge? Failing to stop Coxinga. The seeds of the charges against Coyet were sown 4 years earlier, when Coxinga's fleet arrived in Taiwan Bay. Shortly after his arrival, Coxinga demands the surrender of Fort Provincia. The Dutch commanders send envoys, who are treated to a personal audience with Coxinga. The meeting does not go well. Coxinga rants, "Taiwan belongs to me. Wherever I go, I triumph. You Hollanders would be insane to fight against my thousands of soldiers." It wasn't the answer the envoys hoped for. But Fort Provincia was nearly out of water and weapons. On May 4th, Fort Provincia surrenders to Coxinga. His foothold secure, Coxinga turns his fury upon his last obstacle, Fort Zeelandia. But Coxinga doesn't attack immediately.
He's afraid his men are going to starve. He's got a huge army, 25,000 people. It's not enough to feed him. And so he realizes he can't keep trying to attack the castle. He has to go start growing food. And so he sends his men out into the countryside and they plant potatoes and rice. And both sides then settle in for a long and prolonged siege.
In the meantime, Coxinga gathers intelligence for his final assault. He knows what he's up against. Fort Zeelandia is really two forts lashed together, an upper castle and a lower one. It is a Renaissance fortification of a kind that Coxinga and his army have never encountered before. Its walls are high and sloping, and from the top, it affords views in every direction. It is a commanding fortress with one weak spot. To the west, a redoubt on the high sand dune is the one location from which it is possible to fire down into Fort Zeelandia. Koxinga knows this, but it will take time to secure the dune. Koxinga is patient. So is the ship construction team. Every spring, Tainan honors Koxinga with a cultural festival. The event is held for 3 days, starting on April 30th, the day Koxinga landed in Taiwan. Coinciding with this year's festival is a ceremony that marks the sealing of the ship's hull. After the festivities, the shipbuilding process resumes. The ship's sidings are put in place. A thick rope is pounded between the seams to make a tighter seal. The deck is laid in. The tar makes it watertight. Wood tar was used to seal traditional sailboats for many centuries. The team coats the exterior of the boat with paint. As in the Hirado painting, the colors are white, black, and red. Next, an important detail: the eye. It is an ancient tradition that it is said protects the sailors from evil spirits. The main and front masts, they are what give junks their iconic look, are lifted onto the deck. The main mast is 28 meters tall. Another signature feature of the junks, largely unchanged since the Middle Ages, are the fan-shaped sails that powered Koxinga's trip across the South China Sea.
都还是保留传统，都还是跟我们一样的，它也是用布缝制起来的，用毛竹一档一档的撑起来的，这样一个中国的传统风范。
Now that the boat is nearly complete, it has to prove itself seaworthy. The crew is anxious for the upcoming day, when the ship will be launched into the water. The siege has lasted more than 9 months. There are 1,700 Dutch inside the fort. Soldiers, women, and children. Many are sick and injured. But then, something unexpected happens.
An alcoholic German decides to come over from the Dutch side to Koxinga's side, and he tells Koxinga some real good ways to launch a final assault against the castle.
Atop the dune, the Dutch have built a small fortification called a redoubt. This is the spot Koxinga has to attack. It will provide a vantage point from where he can fire into the fort and on anything that moves on the lower ground of Zeelandia. For Koxinga, now is the time to strike. For the boat, now is the time to be tested on the water. While the preparation for the ship's first sail are in full swing at the building site, there are already celebrations all over the streets of Tainan. Mazu's birthday is honored today, as it has been every spring for many generations. Mazu is the goddess of the sea, worshipped in Taiwan, Hong Kong, and China's coastal areas by the locals who turn to her for protection. She is still loved and worshipped today by millions of people, with countless shrines in her honor. It is believed that Koxinga was one of her faithful devotees. In some historical accounts, it is noted that Koxinga turned to divine powers. Some say it was to Matsu herself in prayer when he needed her help raising the tide so he can enter the bay and fight the Dutch. Today, at the street procession in Tainan, both Koxinga and Matsu deities are carried by the local people, making stops at businesses along the way for blessing. Once the deities reach the shipbuilding site, the launching ceremony begins. Project Manager Chen is nervous, as are the rest of the crew. All eyes will be on them if anything goes wrong with the ship. Suddenly, a giant halo appears in the sky. For a moment, all focus is turned away from the ship.
It is a very special sign for the God to bless this ship.
Perhaps it is a message from Matsu for their ship's safe journey. On this day, the 17th century Taiwan boat is about to be launched into the waters for the first time. Combining 17th century methods and modern techniques, the builders hope it won't simply sink. But the ship isn't ready to sail under its own power yet. A fishing boat pulls it the short distance from where it was built to a nearby dock. The reason? A fear that the ship powered by sails is not safe enough. It may lose control and be damaged. It's a risk the city government of Tainan and project manager Chen are not willing to make. They make a crucial decision in the upcoming months. They will add something that was definitely not available in Koxinga's time: an engine. It is the final blow to the historians.
Koxinga's junks are fascinating. Should it have a motor? I'm sure that if it was a faithful reproduction, it would be every bit as seaworthy as those 17th century junks that ruled the seas.
Without a motor, the ship will remain docked in the harbor. Without an attack on the redoubt, Koxinga and Koyet are stuck in a stalemate. January 25, 1662. Koxinga launches the battle that leads to his triumph. The assault comes from all sides at once. Junks firing from the channel, coming right under the walls of Zeelandia Castle. The junk's aim is to distract the Dutch's attention from the main attack on land, on the redoubt. Koxinga's soldiers, positioned on the dune, fire their cannons at the redoubt. The amount of ammunition is astounding. 2,500 cannonballs are fired in one day. The artillery demolishes the walls. Inside the redoubt, the Dutch are gone. They've retreated back to Fort Zeelandia. 2 days later, Governor Koyet is offering to do what he has refused to consider for months: turn over Fort Zeelandia to Koxinga. Koxinga receives Koyet's final note. We agree to hand over to Your Highness this castle and the company's money and goods. Koxinga has done it. He has transported his army to Taiwan by junk and starved out one of the greatest European powers of the 17th century.
He won mainly by larger numbers and by better organization. Clearly, too, he was a man who knew how to attract people, how to lead them, how to keep them loyal to him.
February 1st, 1662. The surrender is signed. The Dutch quit Taiwan. 4 years later, Governor Coyette finds his head on the chopping block. But it is just a terrifying warning. Coyette's life is spared. His reputation is not. Despite his victory, Koxinga's fate is a sad one. Merely a few months after capturing the fort, Koxinga, only 37, would be dead. No one knows what disease killed him. Some say malaria, others madness. Koxinga fought the Manchu conquerors for nearly 2 decades, hoping to return the Ming to power, the dynasty he swore to defend till death. But when the Manchu armies were closing in on him in Fujian, he set sail across the Taiwan Strait with hundreds of junks and an army of 25,000 men. He plans to drive the Dutch occupiers out of Taiwan, reinforce his army, and return to China in greater strength, but it is only partially successful. Koxinga defeats the great European power and reclaims Taiwan. But his premature death brings to a tragic end his lifelong struggle to restore the Ming dynasty. Before his death, he feels he has failed miserably.
I think he died of a broken heart. He staggers from his bed to the shrine in his castle where he keeps the awards that he's received from the various Ming princes, and he grabs one of them and he clutches it to his heart and he says, "How will I meet my emperor in heaven with my mission unfulfilled?" And then he dies.
But in his death, the myth was born.
Within 2 generations of his death, he was being upheld by the new Qing dynasty as a model of loyalty. And to whom? To the enemies, to the Ming. There are many people who have become missed, but usually they're only missed to one side and not to another. I mean, it's very difficult to find somebody who was missed to everybody. He was.
Wherever he had lived, Koxinga became a symbol of loyalty and strength. In Japan, his birthplace, he became a hero. In China, where he spent most of his life, he is the emblem of bravery, a man who never gave up on his mission. In Taiwan, where his life ended, he is viewed as the founding father. Many Han Chinese followed in his footsteps and settled on the island. Koxinga is buried in China's Fujian province, where he assembled his great fleet and army and set out on his faithful journey to Taiwan. 2 years after construction began, the junk, now titled Koxinga's ship, is about to make a ceremonial journey from Anping Harbor to the mouth of Lurman River, where Koxinga landed 350 years ago. For the journey's blessing, Koxinga's deity is brought on board. The 29.5-meter wooden replica is now powered by an engine imported from Sweden. The navigation system is electronic, and there are generators inside the belly of the ship. With the addition of these mechanical features, the historical versus safety argument comes to an end. For the people that have been involved with this project from the beginning, the shipbuilders and Mayor Xu, this is a monumental day.
经过5年的努力，从无变成有，从不可能变成可能。今天17世纪这一艘船将以文化亲善大使的身份，首先绕行台湾1周，然后接着要回到郑成功的出生地，也就是日本的平户。接着下来就是郑成功的成长地，长大的地方就是中国泉州的南安。再来就是郑成功练兵准备进攻台湾的地方，就是厦门跟金门。
In the end, historians agree, Koxinga was the Sea King, the man who used the great junk ships of the 17th century to expel the European colonists from Taiwan.
It's been 350 years since Koxinga died, and he still sparks such strong emotions. And like his legacy, this boat is a constant struggle between outrageous fictions and historical fact, between myth and history. And here in Tainan, this boat has brought him back to life.